Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. I tweeted this out the other day. I think what we need is a good stand your ground law for Christians in Egypt. Their churches continue to get torched and bombed, their homes bombed, people killed in Egypt. And by the way, one of the things that's complicating President Obama most likely is that his brother is tied in tight to the Muslim Brotherhood. He even runs a foundation that's based in the United States that's just a front for the Muslim Brotherhood. Let me see if I can find that story in here. Here it is, WND.com. Obama's brother linked to Muslim Brotherhood. President Obama's half-brother in Kenya could cause the White House more headaches over new evidence linking him to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and establishing that controversial IRS supervisor Lois Lerner signed his tax-exempt approval letter. Malik Obama is his name. He has oversight of the Muslim Brotherhood's international investments. And this is one of the reasons for the Obama administration's support of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is according to an Egyptian report citing the vice president of the Supreme Constitutional Court of Egypt, a guy by the name of Tahani El Gabali. Gabali said she would like to inform the American people, quote, that their president's brother Obama is one of the architects of the major investments of the Muslim Brotherhood. He is the executive secretary of the Islamic Dawah organization. Dawah is their word for evangelism or proselytization, which, remember, under Islamic theology can either be done by persuasion or at the point of a sword. That's part of Dawah, is put a sword to your neck and order you to convert to Islam. They consider that evangelism. That's Islamic evangelism. In Christianity, it's persuasion, it's prayer, it's love, it's relationship. Under Islam, it's pay a tax, convert, or we'll cut your head off. So he's in charge of the Islamic Dawah organization, which was created by the government of Sudan, which our State Department considers to be a terrorist state. Sudan is a terrorist state. It's a state sponsor of terrorism. So this Malik Obama, president's half-brother, is in bed with terrorists. He's working in a terrorist state as an official of an organization created by terrorists. Now, here's what is particularly sort of aggravating. We've talked about this, how Tea Party groups have been applying to the IRS since 2010 for tax-exempt status, and some of them still haven't heard. Some of them haven't got their approval letter back. It's been 3 years. I went through this in 2005. I know that the law requires the IRS to give you an answer within 270 days, and that's about when I got my answer back in 2005. They've been waiting for 3.5 years for their tax-exempt status. It still hasn't come. But this Barack H. Obama Foundation, so this Malik Obama named the foundation after his brother, Barack H. Obama. It's the Barack H. Obama Foundation. Received, listen to this, back in 2011, received IRS approval 1 month after the application was submitted. Application submitted in May of 2011. By June of 2011, the tax-exempt status had been granted by the IRS. And to make it worse, the IRS did something extremely irregular. They granted retroactive tax-exempt status because this foundation, quote unquote, had been operating since 2008 completely illegally. They had never applied to the IRS. So Lois Lerner was the one that handled this. Lois Lerner is the one that signed the letter, not only granted them their tax-exempt status within a month, but made it retroactive to 2008, which is the way of covering up all of that illegal activity. Now, let's go to President Obama's weekly address, clip number 7. This is President Obama going after the Republicans for what they are trying to do to protect the American people from Chernobyl care. Let's listen.
But there's also a group of Republicans in Congress working hard to confuse people and making empty promises that they'll either shut down the health care law or, if they don't get their way, they'll shut down the government. Think
No, you
about
will.
that. They're actually having a debate between hurting Americans who will no longer be denied affordable health care just because they've been sick and harming the economy and millions of Americans in the process. And many Republicans are more concerned with how badly this debate will hurt them politically than they are with how badly it'll hurt the country. A lot of Republicans seem to believe that if they can gum up the works and make this law fail, they'll somehow be sticking it to me. But they'd just be sticking it to you. Some even say that if you call their office with questions about the law, they'll refuse to help. Call me old-fashioned, but that's lousy constituent service, and it's not what you deserve. Your health insurance isn't something to play politics with. Our economy isn't something to play politics with. This is not a game. It's about the economic security of millions of families. See, in the states where governors and legislatures and insurers are working together to implement this law properly, states like California, New York, Colorado, and Maryland, competition and consumer choice are actually making insurance affordable. So I'm going to keep doing everything in my power to make sure this law works as it's supposed to. Because in the United States of America, health insurance isn't a privilege, it's your right. And we're going to keep it that way.
Now, we could spend the rest of the day just unpacking that. This is 1 minute and 33 seconds of total absolute bilge. One thing, Rob mentioned this in my ear while we were listening to this. This is just unpresidential language. I mean, he diminishes the office of the president. We uses words like lousy. This is lousy constituent service. This is the president of the United States speaking formally to the American people. And he says they think they'll be sticking it to me, but they just be sticking it to you. I mean, that's street talk. That is not presidential language. And, you think back through some of the contents of this soundbite. If they don't get their way, they'll shut down the government. No, it's not the Republicans that will shut down the government. It will be President Obama who will be shutting down the government. And he says they'll be having a debate between hurting Americans who will no longer be denied affordable care. So this is all about, he says, affordable care and insurance. Well, ask the 15,000 spouses that just got told by UPS, you get no insurance from us because of President Obama. That's gone. Ask the people that work at Forever 21. All of them that aren't management just got told their hours are going to be cut back to 29 and a half, so they don't get health insurance. That's the whole point of it. Where's the affordable health care for them? Now, the one thing he said that I agree with, the only thing he said in here I agree with, many Republicans are more concerned with how badly this debate will hurt them politically. That's exactly right. That's why they won't sign on to Don't Fund Obamacare. They are afraid about how this debate will hurt them politically. They're not concerned primarily about the health and interest of the country, their children, their grandchildren, and the generations to come. They are just operating out of raw, craven fear. And remember the Bible, somebody counted it up one time. I got no reason to doubt it, but somebody said the Bible says, fear not, 365 times, one time for every day in the year. And he uses the expression gum up the works. That's not presidential language. They believe that they can gum up the works, make this law fail. They'll be sticking it to me. Well, gumming up the works, President Obama, you are talking here about the American political process. This is how it works. This is not gumming up the works. This is a representative form of government in operation. You're not a dictator. You are not a king. There are constitutional remedies to deal with laws that people don't like, and that's what they are pursuing. Perfectly legitimate, perfectly constitutional, nothing wrong with it. They are not gumming up the works. They are exercising their right as the elected representatives of the American people. And then he talks about the wonders of the states that are working together to implement this law properly. Well, we just heard about one, Idaho. They're not even going to roll out their exchanges because they cannot have any assurance from the federal government that confidential information is going to be secure. And then the last thing, and then we'll take some calls. He says, and this is particularly egregious, he says this, health insurance isn't a privilege, it is your right. This is absolutely, totally, 100% wrong. He says health insurance isn't a privilege. It is your right. It cannot be a right. Remember, I mentioned this before, but it cannot be a right if it makes a demand on somebody else's wallet. If the only way that thing that they're calling a right, the only way that that thing can be realized, can be implemented, is by reaching into somebody else's wallet and taking money against their will. In other words, taking their private property against their will, stealing from them in essence, in order to implement it, cannot possibly be a right. It is not a right. If it makes a demand on somebody else's wallet, it is not a right. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Tony in Paducah, Kentucky. Tony, welcome. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Brian, for having me. I just want to say if you're ever close to Paducah, I'd sure love to buy you dinner one night and spend an hour talking to you.
Well, I'd love to take you up on it.
Anytime. Well, listen, I'm just really concerned that you've raised a lot of issues with a lot of questions. We've got to get some answers, and I just feel like that nothing's going to change in Washington. We've hired 500 plus people to serve us up there, and we're paying them to destroy this country is what it boils down to. We live in a constitutional republic, not a kingdom. We don't have a Caesar. We have we the people. And there's 150 million of us out here that don't agree with Obama. We're not on welfare. We don't take food stamps. We work. We take care of our families every day. And I just feel like if we want to defund Obamacare, we need to defund Washington, D.C. There's nothing that goes on in Washington, D.C. that the individual states couldn't take care of on their own. They're not doing anything for the people of this country but running it into the ground with their socialistic policies. And it's just very concerning that the people, we've got to have some answers. We're raising a lot of questions. We've got to have some answers that the people can say, hey, yeah, we'll get behind this. We'll make a difference now. And it's just, there's a lot of people out there saying Hannity and Glenn Beck and a lot of people raising a lot of issues, a lot of questions. Nobody's got any answers.
All right, Tony. Well, one of the things, we just need more people like Ted Cruz. We need to send more Ted Cruzes, more Rand Pauls, more Mike Lees back to the Senate. You got a good one there in Kentucky in Rand Paul. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be back in 2 minutes.